Hey Ben, Raj here. Good to see you again.
Hey man, good to chat.
Thanks for taking a little bit of time, and thanks for contributing to our ebook. We really appreciated you contributing to that, and I wanted to just go a little bit deeper for folks on kind of your article, which is about hybrid infrastructures, which is really cool. Wanted to just ask you a few more questions and get a little bit more perspective on your beliefs around hybrid infrastructures.
Sure, sounds great.
So let's start with tell me more about what you mean about hybrid organizations. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I guess if you look at the traditional organization, it was fairly monolithic in that it was fairly static. It didn't change much. Individuals didn't come and go. It was kind of you had a job and you had a job for life. And decisions kind of happened on a fairly slow cadence. If we convert that, or if we look at what happens today, we have organisations like Uber or Netflix, or even traditional organisations like General Electric, where they see innovation and agility as being a core part of what they do. And so these organisations move a heck of a lot faster. They make a lot of use of outside parties, third-party contractors and consultants, and it's a much more sort of organic nature type of organisation.
So is that kind of how you came up with or talked a little bit about the composable enterprise too concept? Because that's sort of like it felt very organic.
Yeah, so I mean, composable enterprise wasn't my kind of concept. It's something that's been talked about previously, in particular by Jonathan Murray, who used to be the CTO of Warner Music Group. But fundamentally, composable enterprise is a really interesting concept because it's an organizational concept that mirrors a technological viewpoint. And so, whereas traditional IT architectures were monolithic, modern architectures are composable in that they take advantage of modular developer components, modular tools that get plugged together to build custom solutions that best meet the needs of the organisation or the particular task at hand. And the organisation itself has a similar structure where you might have a rapid prototyping team that combines with a specific production team that combines with a development team for a specific project that leverages kind of the subject matter expertise of those different parts of the organisation.
So is that sort of how you think about all these different services that are out there, SaaS services, API services, web services, all these things that are just appearing and have been appearing for the last decade, but are really sort of coming into their own right now?
Yes, I mean, Chris Anderson from Wired talked about the long tail and this notion that every organisation will be able to get custom solutions to suit their particular requirements, and that's not necessarily technological requirements. That means that myself, as a consumer, I can get highly specific offerings, be it the shoes I wear or the clothes I wear or the car I drive. And so as you have this notion of very specific requirements across this long tail, then clearly the technology solutions that need to deliver those need to be much more modular and composable. The old traditional views of one suite, one monolithic solution for everything simply won't cut it in the future world for modern and advanced organisations.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Companies that are providing those individual services out to their customers. So that makes a lot of sense. So one of the other things that you talked about in your piece around doing more faster now with IT control, that was the name of our ebook, is talking about weaving the fabric of tech and people. So can you give us some examples of some organizations that you think are doing that, and a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is that when the notion of the composable enterprise first came out, we had these sort of organisational structures that mapped to that, but we didn't really have the technology. So one example I like to use is that of Uber. And obviously Uber's had some really, really bad press lately, but if we put aside the morality of the business or the morality of the leadership, what's really interesting about Uber is they took some pre-existing components. Take some Google mapping, alongside the Google Maps API, you take payments through Stripe or Braintree or whoever, you mix it up with some scheduling modules, you deliver emails through SendGrid, you use Twilio to get your communications, and all of a sudden you're tying together a bunch of different components to create an application that can then change business models. So what we're seeing is this fundamental shift in business models being enabled by a modular and composable approach towards software.
Yeah, and Uber is obviously a great example of that because they don't really own a lot of stuff. They're not owning the taxis or the cabs or the cars, and the folks that are driving them are, I believe, independent contractors. So I think in a lot of ways it's a brilliant model of taking all these different components, putting it together in a different way than maybe anybody else had thought of in order to deliver this pretty incredible service.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a fantastic business model. It's disruption in action. Clearly, there's some kind of sociological, humanistic impacts from that, but that's kind of a topic for another day, I guess.
Yep. Cool. So let's sort of end on one question that I thought was really interesting, or at least you sort of touched on it right at the beginning of your article, using Mark Andreessen's quote about software is eating the world. So is software really going to eat the core of the enterprise market? I mean, companies that aren't in tech, is that really going to be the core of their operations is going to be in software?
So I guess there's two ways to look at that, and I'm a firm believer, and I often use the Mark Andreessen quote myself. Software is going to eat the world. That doesn't mean that if you make widgets or you sow things or you grow cattle or farm dairy animals, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you're not going to do that and there's going to be software produced cattle. What it means is that every organisation needs to think about what it does through the lens of software. So for example, if I am a meat producer, for example, I want to think about software, how software can help me connect my supply side with my customers. So if I can give my customers visibility into the life cycle of the steak that they're eating, if they can understand about where it came from, how the animal was treated, when it was killed, all that sort of providence type stuff as well as safety stuff, then that delivers extra value on top of the product. So it doesn't mean software is going to totally remove traditional industries. What it means is that traditional industries will be reimagined through the lens of software.
And I think that goes full circle into what you're talking about, hybrid organizations, right? So basically those organizations that can leverage these composable building blocks, if you will, and put them to work in their industry and imagine sort of a next generation of their industry, it seems like those are the folks that are going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a kind of a cycle or a circle where composable technology delivers composable enterprises that allow organizations to disrupt, that then with that disruption and with that flexibility and agility and innovation, more innovation can happen. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle.
Yep, and it only seems like it's accelerating. It's not getting any slower, that's for sure.
For sure.
Cool. All right, thank you, Ben. We're going to let you get to your flight. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes to chat with us. And thank you again for writing for our ebook. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Always good.
Thanks.